NMIS, and just want to extend a very warm welcome to you all this morning for our NMIS Insights, looking at introducing the new engineering and digital manufacturing technical apprenticeship to yourselves. So hopefully you'll find this useful and interesting, and a really good overview of what's been in development in this area and is now available for launch. So just want to go through, if I can get this to work. Just stop sharing a second, sorry folks, doesn't seem to want to move on. Try again. There we go. Okay, I knew there was going to be a technical hitch at some point this morning. So again, as I say, my name is Rachel Moyer, and for you today, I'm going to give you, just before we kick off, a little bit of an overview. I know some of you online will be new to NMIS, and just give you a bit of background on NMIS and a bit of a background as to why we were interested in the development of this apprenticeship. I'll then pass you on to my colleagues from SDS, Terry and Billy, who will give you a bit more detail about how the apprenticeship was developed and how you can access the framework and get involved as well. And then we'll move on to a little bit of a discussion with one of our industry partners, Trevor Wiggins, to give you a bit of an insight from an industry perspective as well. And as always, there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions at the end, so please pop them in the chat box as we're going along. So just a few things before we kick off with the session. As you'll probably see from the top of your screen, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel after the event. As with most of these things, your microphones and webcams will be turned off during the session just to avoid some of that background noise as well. And as I said there before, if you get any questions via the session, please pop them in the chat tool, and we'll make sure that we get through them at the end of the session. There's the hashtag there as well for those of you on social media that want to go into Twitter. That's a hashtag for the NMIS Insights. And also at the end of this, there will be a survey that comes out, and we'd be really grateful if you could give us some feedback on the session as well. It always helps us to improve what we do going forward. So just as I say, just a quick overview of who NMIS are, the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland. So it's a group of industry-led manufacturing research and development facilities where we try to bring together the public sector, industry and research really to try and transform manufacturing in Scotland and really try and make the most out of this great potential that we have in Scotland to be that global leader in advanced manufacturing. So it really is this attempt to pull together all these groups across the board to work together to grow the industry as well. What NMIS is looking to do, we're looking to increase productivity by reducing barriers to innovation, looking to bring investment in and increase some of that competitiveness as well across the board using new technologies. We're trying to catalyse that job creation and strengthen some of the supply chain links. We're also equally looking to inspire and attract talent into Scotland. And again, myself working within the Manufacturing Skills Academy, that's very much the focus of what we do. And we're looking to work with businesses across all sizes, right from spin-outs all the way up to large companies as well across Scotland. So it really is that Scotland-wide approach for NMIS as well. So NMIS itself is operated by the University of Strathclyde, but we are Scotland-wide. As I say, we're very much got a national remit to work across Scotland. So we are operated by Strathclyde, but really we work with partners right the way across Scotland, both from industry and academia as well. And we're supported by the One Scotland team from a funding point of view as well. So the NMIS group itself, I'd say NMIS is really a collaboration of a number of centres. We have two specialist centres which have been in operation for quite some time, particularly the Advanced Forming Research Centre based in Inchinnan, and also Lightweight Manufacturing Centre. So these are our two specialist centres. But NMIS is wider than that. As I say, we've got the Digital Factory, the Collaboration Hub and the Manufacturing Skills Academy that are all going to be housed in our new building that's been built out near Glasgow Airport, which is due to open at the end of the summer and the beginning of autumn. But the work in these areas is already ongoing, although we don't have our official building yet. We have very much been trying to establish various programmes under the Manufacturing Skills Academy and build these collaborations across Scotland. As I say, it's very much, although we have the headquarters will be in the building down at Inchinnan, It's very much across Scotland and an attempt at pulling together networks to really advance the manufacturing industry across Scotland and build that community as well to make the most of what we've got here. So just coming on to today, just to give you a little bit of an overview as to why NMIS were involved in this new engineering and digital manufacturing technical apprenticeship. So the speed of change today really is like nothing we've seen before. And we know that many of the jobs that our primary school children, for example, will be going into haven't even been invented yet. And it's quite mind-blowing and really quite hard to get a handle on. And digitisation really has the potential to transform manufacturing in Scotland and make it world-leading, a sustainable industry. However, we can only really take full advantage of these opportunities if we make sure we have the right people with the right skills at the right time. And this isn't easy, we know this, particularly at a time when there's more jobs than potential employees for the first time in decades, and there's a fight for talent across all the sectors. It's clear that we really have to make some significant changes to our training and education systems in order to be more reactive to change, provide a wider range of training pathway routes, and embrace new technologies. And this new engineering digital manufacturing technical apprenticeship that we're here to launch today is very much a key element of this evolution. Now, the apprenticeship in engineering and digital manufacturing has been created to ensure that Scotland and its employers have the necessary skills to prosper in a digital manufacturing environment. The apprenticeship was created in response to calls from NMIS and employers from across the sector who need both existing and new staff to be trained in emerging technologies. And it's really the first of its kind to incorporate training in artificial intelligence, 3D modelling and data science. The apprenticeship provides an alternative pathway to graduate study from engineering modern apprenticeship or for those with equivalent experience. And this is really important, particularly as it's recognised that a key element of addressing equality, diversity and inclusion in the industry is the introduction of non-traditional pathways to education. So NMIS, we really fully support the implementation of this new apprenticeship as it brings both benefits to the Scottish economy and our member companies, enabling them to become leaner, more competitive while addressing some of these issues of the labour shortages. Our speakers today will provide some more background on the development of the apprenticeship and how it can be accessed by employers. And I really hope that what you hear today will inspire some of the participants on the call to get involved in training and really training that next generation of digital ready talent within Scotland. So I will hand over to Terry and Bill just to give you a bit more background from SDS.
That's great. Thank you, Rachel. Excuse me a moment while I bring up my slides. Oh, sorry. A second. Really just to kind of introduce myself. My name is Terry Diller and I work for Skills Development Scotland and can lead the apprenticeship development teams. And before I hand you over to my colleague Billy and Trevor to talk to you about why this apprenticeship is important and how industry can use it, I'm conscious of the international audience that we have at the moment, and one of the things I'm keen to do is to kind of make sure that, or just to kind of take a few moments to just explain how we've developed this apprenticeship, how this is different in terms of kind of how we've approached apprenticeship development in the past, and how we've engaged industry and throughout that, and how we believe that this approach enables apprentices that undertake this apprenticeship and the apprenticeship, the Scottish apprenticeships overall, to be able to develop and adapt to kind of some of those rapid changes that Rachel mentioned. So when we look at kind of how we develop apprenticeships in Scotland, for those that are perhaps consumers of apprenticeships but not necessarily been involved in it, we've taken a new approach to the development of apprenticeships since about 2020. And part of that approach is around about kind of taking on some of the key learnings and research from kind of those highest performing work-based learning and apprenticeship systems. And what we've seen across these effective systems are the best performing systems and the systems with the best return in terms of productivity, in terms of return on investment, are systems that are led by industry with direct engagement of industry and employers throughout the development of apprenticeships and throughout the apprenticeship process. And that is the characteristic that we have begun to kind of install with the help of our Scottish Apprenticeship Advisory Group and others throughout the apprenticeship system that we have. So throughout all layers of the apprenticeship system, through governance, as I mentioned, through the engagement of employers within the Scottish Apprenticeship Advisory Board, which directs and shapes how we develop apprenticeships in this country, through to the approval, through our apprenticeship approval groups, and the development through technical expert groups made up predominantly of employers. We've began to kind of look at how we make sure that actually employers' views and employers' input is at the centre of apprenticeships as we develop them, so that we can ensure that there is a direct link between employer needs and what's developed into apprenticeships. In addition to this, we hope that this approach, being more agile and being more iterative, that enables us to reduce the development time of apprenticeships, which is somewhere in the region of 2 years to 30 months, to somewhere into that 15-month period. That enables us to make sure that when we capture the skills from employers, that we get them into programmes and make them available to you as soon as you need them. Additionally, what we've began to kind of look at and what we've learned from kind of other systems is to engage directly, not only with employers and those that know the role really well, but those that are doing the work. So initially to engage with employees that are doing the role that we are looking to develop, to understand from them what exact that work involves, where it happens, and what knowledge and skills that are required to undertake and be competent within that work. Further to this, looking at the structure that we think about apprenticeships, one of the areas that we're conscious of, and as kind of Rachel mentioned, not only do we have elements where we want people to be their first kind of learning journey post-school, but recognising that within Scotland, that there's an opportunity for individuals to use this apprenticeship, both as upskilling from the apprenticeships that we have at USCQF level 6, but also to think about the elements of digital manufacturing that are in this apprenticeship that can be used to upskill existing engineering technicians so that they can understand and how they might be able to use those and begin to kind of move and develop their skills into a digital manufacturing environment. And finally, as part of these conversations that we have with industry and employers, we make sure that there's ample time for consideration of elements of sustainability, which this apprenticeship covers very well in terms of kind of looking at kind of how elements of kind of waste reduction and use of technology are covered, but also diversity, equality, and inclusion, and elements of the Fair Work Convention to ensure that this apprenticeship offers all of those aspects and ensures that kind of these elements are considered in the apprenticeship development. When we look at the key elements of the approach and design to this apprenticeship, that one of the key elements that we looked at was kind of making use of partnerships and making use of kind of the industry overall and making sure that the industry engage with it. So one of our key partnerships and key development partners in this area were Enginuity, the Sector Skills Council for Engineering, formerly known as SEPTA, and utilising the experience that Enginuity have around about the expertise and experience and learnings that they take not only from their engagement within Scotland but across the whole of the UK and beyond. The really exciting an additional piece of element that we used within the development of this was utilising the data science capability that Enginuity have developed to make sure to look at up to 20,000 job adverts for kind of roles that exist like this, to look at a range of different skills taxonomies from Europe, the UK and abroad, to make sure that the evidence that we capture not only from those individuals that we speak to, the employees, but to kind of supplement that with a really rich and robust evidence base so that when we bring that evidence to the employers in the technical expert group, they're able to make the best choices and provided with the best evidence and basing the apprenticeship that we develop on top of that. In addition to that, engaging throughout the sector. So working with Paul Sheeran and Scottish Engineering to engage with employers and industry throughout these developments and make sure that however you choose to engage or wish to engage with the apprenticeship, there's an option to do that, whether that's enabling employees to join or be part of the technical expert group or part of the broader external consultation that we have. And further to this, as Rachel mentioned in her introduction, to collaborate with NMIS and to ensure there's alignment between what industry needs and what NMIS are set out to do, and making sure that we're making the best use of public fund by collaborating and working together in these spaces. But additional to that, what we've also looked at is engaging with the Engineering Skills Leadership Group through Billy to support this development and to make sure there's awareness at the kind of highest levels within the industry in this area. And probably the kind of final thing that I would want to add with regards to the content of the apprenticeship is that while we're looking at kind of how we include the right technical skills and engage the right areas and understand kind of how individuals build the right knowledge, one of the key elements of our new apprenticeship development is that what we would look to do is to integrate the inclusion of meta skills within that. And you'll see within my slide, the meta skills model is a set of 12 skills where we would look at these are integrated into the work situations, integrated into the work that individuals do, and considered how individuals apply these and working with the employer and the training provider to think about how individuals gain these through the work that they do, not separately. This is not about gaining separate skills. This is about thinking how you utilise some of these skills around about self-management, social intelligence and innovation to enhance their professional effectiveness, but also enable them to enable the individuals undertaking this to enable skills that will enable them to adapt to change as change happens within the environment. But the final point I just want to talk about with regards to the apprenticeship is one of the key areas when we began to look at redeveloping apprenticeships was the documentation that we create. And this is might seem a very small matter, but what we're really keen to do is to make sure that the documentation that we create for all our apprenticeships is as simple and as understandable as possible. This shouldn't be a technical document. This should be a document that an employer of any size should be able to pick up and understand what they get from it, what their responsibilities are, and how it can benefit their business. But also what we'd want to do is to enable that so that if there was an individual taking this home to their parents or their influencers, that they can then understand and they can support that individual in understanding what the apprenticeship involves. So making the documentation very clear, very understandable, and able to be picked up and understood by all those that want to was one of the key areas and key developments in terms of this area. But without further ado, I'll not keep you any longer in terms of how we did this apprenticeship. I'll pass on to my colleague Billy, who can talk to you about why we've done this apprenticeship, the difference we expect it to make, and then further in conversation with Trevor around about how we expect industry and business to use this. So over to you, Billy.
Thanks very much indeed, Terry. I'm just going to load my slides. Okay, so I didn't make that larger. Apologies, folks. Can you see my introductory slide? Okay, thanks. Well, thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Terry. My name is Billy Scott from Skills Development Scotland, and I'm the sector manager for engineering, and I'm part of the team that looks after climate emergency and high value manufacturing. So a lot of things are having to align to make this happen. But just to give us a bit of context, my team is part of the directorate called Skills Planning and Sector Development, and we're responsible for defining the skills interventions for industry in Scotland, and we do this via a few levels of employer engagement. So the bottom left there, you see how we engage with employers to establish what their workforce needs are. We have a number of skills groups. Terry referred earlier on to the Engineering Skills Leadership Group, which I work very closely. So we take insights from industry and we create skills investment plans for regions and for sectors. And from my perspective, it's the engineering sector. And we divert our funding to areas of identified skills needs. And we work with the skill supply system to ensure that the courses, the apprenticeships and so on are relevant to the needs of employers. The other side of SDS, which is consumer facing, is our colleagues in the Careers Information and Guidance Directorate, and they engage with individuals to inform individuals where the labour needs are and what skills interventions are appropriate for them to take to make themselves attractive to employers. So that the model is joined up but it's industry-led, and we also focus on individuals so that they know what industry requires, and we provide the interventions so that individuals can become skilled enough to be attractive to employers. It'd be remiss of me before I get any further into this to thank the colleagues and partners who've collaborated to get us where we are today for this new apprenticeship, and partners with Enginuity have given us a great deal of support and have led in many aspects of this. But I would also like to thank all of the employers who took part in the technical expert groups, and the employees who also took part in groups to describe and look at their work situations and what learning they required. I'd also like to thank Scottish Engineering as well. Terry mentioned them before. It's the trade body. They've got 400 members in Scotland. So working with Scottish Engineering and through Scottish Engineering, we get access to a very large number of SMEs in particular. And that industry insight was so helpful. And lastly, I'd just like to thank Terry and his team and partners also in marketing and communications who got us to where we are today. And looking for a launch, or this is the launch, but looking for the apprenticeship programme starting in autumn of this year. It's been a journey, but it's been a real collaborative effort. So what drove us to this? What took us to where we are? There's a number of considerations. The existing modern apprenticeship, SCQF level 6 for engineering, is popular with employers. It's also very popular with employees. And we have, if we combine engineering and energy, there's about 1,600 people every year start the apprenticeship, which is a great deal. It's a 4-year apprenticeship, so that means at any given time there's over 4,000 people on the apprenticeship. But we're starting to increasingly ask, to what extent is that apprenticeship, or was that apprenticeship, fit for purpose? So we looked at our drivers. The Scottish Government invested in NMIS, and that came out of the Manufacturing Action Plan, which evolved into Making Scotland's Future. And Making Scotland's Future is looking at how we recover post-pandemic with an agile and effective set of labour market interventions. We're also looking at what's different in technology in the past 10 years, and Industry 4 tools and techniques have come into play. The pandemic accelerated investment in new technology, so we're seeing increased automation. We're seeing companies look at how they can be more efficient in their resource usage. We are looking at industry telling us they've got skills shortages as a result of Brexit, result of the pandemic, as a result of an aging profile. So can we use automation to make industry more productive? Yes, but we need to make sure that people have the skills required to be more productive. And for this qualification, we looked at the talent pipeline, and we noted that the current crop of 16-year-olds is probably as small as it's ever been in Scotland. They are seeing more things, more career opportunities being attractive, the construction sector, financial services, tourism, life and chemical sciences. We're all sectors are competing for the best available talent. So yes, we have to look at new entrants coming into the workforce, but we also have to look at the existing workforce, workers in other sectors, say sunset sectors like oil and gas. Could they be a part of the talent pipeline for us? And as I said, we're looking at skill shortages as well. So what sort of interventions can we do to make people more productive, so that by using more technology, we actually don't need as many people, or we don't need to let the skill shortages affect us? And that was one of the drivers for the content of this digital manufacturing and engineering qualification. The last driver is close to my heart, and that's the drive to net zero. The Scottish Government has set an ambitious target of net zero, and Skills Development Scotland and partners developed the Climate Emergency Skills Action Plan. and again with industry and talent in mind. Engineers in the call will know all about engineering efficiency, making more things better, using fewer resources, and that comes natural to engineers to eliminate waste. But what skills do we require to get us to net zero? A lot of the skills that have been identified form the content of this new qualification, but we must point ourselves on a road to net zero with just transition in mind and not leaving people behind. And moving on. I'd like to thank Partners in Enginuity for providing us with this lovely infographic. Looking at digital manufacturing apprenticeship, what's the point of it? And without going into an enormous amount of detail, there's plenty of research has been undertaken about the impacts of digital technologies for manufacturers. Digital technologies enables us to look at new markets and increase business developments, increased opportunities, and also an increase in productivity. Again, back to the engineering efficiency, lean approach to business. And a lovely quote there from United Nations. Digital technologies, we know they've advanced more rapidly in the past 10 years than ever before. We have to ensure in the just transition and no one left behind that everyone has access to better connectivity, access to public services, and technology has got the opportunity to be the great equalizer, but we need to make sure that people who make things have the skills in order to develop that. And I'll just thank you for your attention there. And I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce an excellent partner in this whole process, and that is Trevor Wiggins from Baker Hughes and Global Technology Manager. Trevor, would you like to introduce yourself and your business?
Yeah, so I'm Trevor Wiggins. So I'm the Global Technology Manager for Baker Hughes for the oil field business. Been with the company for 9 years now. A lot of previous experience in aviation that I brought into the industry. So from a company perspective, we're an energy technology business that obviously provides energy solutions for industrial partners. We work over 120 countries in the world, and we invest massively in innovation, technology, and people. And as Billy said, our drive going forward is for safer, cleaner, and more efficiency for people and the planet. So we're heavily investing in hydrogen transportation, hydrogen storage, geothermal, carbon capture, and reducing overall in all of our global sites, reduce our carbon footprint to ensure that we meet the goals of the planet and the world changing around us. So we're a full stream business for anybody who doesn't know. So we can actually provide a full turnkey solution from cradle to grave, basically from production of the drill bits to the drilling process, down to the modular deep water technologies, including one of the biggest portfolios of gas turbine and compressors in the business as well. And again, from the discussion today, we've been having people are our most important asset, and investment in our people and up and coming apprenticeships and graduates is one of the key things for Baker Hughes.
Thanks, Trevor. Can I ask, in that case, what first interested you in this new award?
Well, personally, because I always invest in apprentices and take on new talent. Personally, myself, I was an apprentice 36 years ago. Started my career as a toolmaking apprentice, And as I've personally grown and moved within businesses, I've seen the apprentice programs be very not changing with what's happening from a technology, point of view and what's happening in the world around us. We're still teaching old skills from 36 years ago, the old ways of working. And again, Billy, as you said, if we need to move forward from a change in the way we work and environmental support, again, we need to be leaner, use better ways of working. Digital solutions is one of the key ones for those. So it's close to my heart as going through that apprenticeship program, and like I say, years and years ago, there's a need for change. The industry, manufacturing industry is changing globally. New technologies are coming out. We're developing new technology internally, and that's one of the big reasons and passions why I wanted to be part of this.
Thanks, Trevor. Now you were part of the technical expert group, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
So this new award, what's the key difference between the new award and what went before?
I'd say probably the biggest and one of the important things we all emphasised in the industry for start off was the meta skills that Terry was discussing. We're finding with the normal apprenticeship program, when the apprentices come into the industry, we're then having to spend 12 to 18 months on the further development of those meta skills that are not covered within the current curriculums. And as well as the collaboration that we had with oil and gas industry, car industry, aviation, etc., we all see the need for the technology changes. Example, probably one of the biggest ones from my perspective for what I'm doing is additive, for instance. The manufacturing processes are not the same as they were 10, 15 years ago. Additive is coming, robotics are coming into our business, digital solutions, monitoring. These are the key things I think we're missing from the existing apprenticeship programs.
That's really interesting. That the sort of advancing technology is something which has been missed or had been missed, but is now in place. Quite interesting that you focus on the meta skills there. Could you summarise for us, Trevor, how meta skills will contribute to your company's growth?
Yeah, so any person within all industries have changed now, where your employees, especially apprentices who are coming through, are not focused on one particular subject anymore. Where the apprenticeship programs, you either went into one stream or another. We want an all-rounded person that can actually adapt and move with the business, because our business, if you look back, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's completely changed with like with what's happened in the world with the global warming, with the obviously with COVID, and that adaptation is not taught in the current apprenticeship programs. So where we talked about teaching people to be able to understand and embrace change is a key aspect for all our industries going forward. Those skills of communication, financial elements of learning the financial element, which gives you your understanding of lean, better ways, more efficient ways of doing things. So those are the sort of things, Billy, that we're missing. I'm having to teach apprentices how to do, for instance, a business case when they start. How do they? We want to invest £1 million in a new piece of technology, but what is the business case? What is the benefits of that investment? Again, those are the sort of meta skills as well that are important that need to be taught.
I think that's a key point, and I've heard that from a number of employers in the sector, is the financial nous. And I referred earlier on to engineering efficiency, but we must also introduce the concept of economic efficiency as well.
Yep.
Because you can be engineering efficient and build the most perfect machine, but it might not make commercial sense.
Correct.
So that's a key point. Thank you. With regard to this new technical apprenticeship in engineering and digital manufacturing, is it your company's plan, Trevor, to use it for new recruits or for upskilling the existing workforce?
I think, Billy, it's both. So as a function within Baker Hughes that I have myself with a technology function to drive technology. So my apprenticeship programs going forward will be driven through this new program, as well as some of the existing apprentices who may be coming out of their current SQE level 6 apprenticeship, maybe putting them into this program to just get those meta skills, those bits that are missing. But even from a point of view of reskilling within our own business, you know, we have people who may need to change roles moving forward and growing with what's happening in the industry, who would benefit from this as well as not just the apprentices coming out of school, so existing workforce as well.
That's interesting. That's interesting, and it kind of implies that your company has a philosophy of lifelong learning.
Yep.
Which is really, really good to hear. Now, in terms of new recruits, I mentioned earlier on that across all industry in Scotland, there's going to be a competition for young talent and future talent. Do you think that this is a 21st century qualification is going to make the sector a more attractive proposition for young people?
Yeah, as you mentioned before, there's a lot of people coming out of school who are going into finance sectors, travel, whatever. And I don't think, from a personal perspective, in my sector that I'm in now, in the oil and gas business, I don't think they understand what we do. And I think the education from the apprenticeship program will give them a better understanding of manufacturing industry in the whole globe, not just in Scotland, but globally, of how it's they have a different perception of what they're doing. So I think, I go into schools locally within Scotland to try and encourage people to move into this industry when they leave school, but I think the perception of the industry is not right. And I think if they see this program of what they're going to get out of it from a education, technology, a broad learning perspective, I think it'll probably encourage them to take the opportunity to do this apprenticeship. And it's not just been written. We, like I said before, we collaborated as a manufacturing industries, multiple manufacturing industries, and had many discussions on the differences that we may want from aviation, may want in Cornish, and come up with a singular program that suits any industry that they want to go into. It's not adapted for one; it's adapted for all manufacturing industries.
Yeah, of which there are many. Scotland's growing space sector means that there's numerous opportunities for people to get involved in manufacturing of nano satellites or the design and manufacture of launch vehicles. It's very much the whole sector is very much for the 21st century, and we've got to make sure that any messaging we send out is that it's not metal bashing. It's a lot more than that. Yeah, just one more question, Trevor, if that's okay. And I note that Sandra Mulligan from IMechE is in the call. And just wanted to ask, Trevor, is your company big on providing new talent, but existing talent, with a route towards professional recognition?
Yeah, so that's one of the big encouragements in our company. I personally, like I say, I have 16 direct reports in my team. Roughly 35% of those are chartered. some mentors within the chartership and actually mentor others within Baker Hughes and in the company. Again, I encourage, and it's one of the encouragements for my apprentices when they come out the apprenticeship to be pushing towards chartered engineer status, as well as developing, you know, to bachelor's degree level or higher. And as a company, we have a lot of people who are, you know, in roles that are very key, example, principal engineering roles, consulting engineering roles, that, you know, is a requirement to develop to that level, and then to mentor the other people who are coming through the routes as well, to give them some insight of a goal in the future of where they could be. And I think it's very important to have that development, Billy, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of the attractive features of this new award is that a person successfully completing the award will be eligible for registration as EngTech, which is the start of the route, and they'll have some of the knowledge and understanding required for them to push on to the next level, which is incorporated engineer, and thereafter towards chartered engineer. So again, what we're looking at here is lifelong learning and constant continuous improvement, I suppose, continuous self-development.
Yep.
Well, thanks very much for that, Trevor. That's fascinating, and you've really been a great supporter of this award, so thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
Rachel, back to you.
Yep, thanks for that. That was a good insight into the background. So as said before, if you've got any questions, folks, please just pop them in the chat and we'll address them as we go through. Just to kick off, I've just got a bit of a question, probably for Terry and Billy. I'm just aware that there's probably a number of people on this call that are interested in either taking on an apprentice or maybe skilling up someone in their own company, but haven't really been involved in the apprenticeship scheme before. And I was wondering, what's the kind of procedure if I was a company that wanted to get somebody on this new apprenticeship? What do I do? Who do I go to? Where do I get the information?
I'll start with this, Terry, if that's okay.
Sure.
The first port of call would be our website, apprenticeships.scot, which gives employers or potential employers of apprentices a site as to how to go about becoming an employer of apprentices. It talks about processes required. It'll put you in touch with a training provider, and you'll work hand in hand with that training provider to identify the correct apprenticeship at the correct level, and you'll develop a work plan, and the training provider will in turn work with Skills Development Scotland to put the funding in place to pay for the knowledge and understanding aspect of the apprenticeship.
Yeah, probably just to add to that, Rachel, within the apprenticeship, everything Billy says is absolutely correct, but probably the kind of first step would be, once you've identified the apprenticeship, have a look at the apprenticeship document. Within that, it details out the kind of the competencies that an individual will gain through the apprenticeship, the knowledge, skills and behaviours, but also within that document, it makes clear in terms of the responsibilities of the employer, the training provider and the individual, and the roles within apprenticeship development, so that the employer gets a full picture of kind of what's involved in the apprenticeship, what would be expected of them, and what would be expected of the other area, what would be expected of the other partners involved within that.
Okay, great, thanks. And there's a question kind of relative to that, and someone's asking about who the providers are for this apprenticeship.
Yeah, we're just in the process of confirming those, so maybe come back to this audience, or can kind of circulate back through you, back through yourself, Rachel, or kind of out to this audience around about that. We're just in the process, because this is a new apprenticeship. We're just kind of, there's elements of contractual positioning that we've got to get in place so that we can offer that. But as we say, we're in advanced, as Billy mentioned, we're in advanced discussion with a number of providers in this space with a view to delivering it from kind of autumn time or kind of late summer. Okay, and
I've had a couple of queries kind of relating to eligibility for the apprenticeship. What's the kind of eligibility background for becoming an apprentice on this scheme? What's the requirements?
Well, an apprentice is an employee, so it's up to the employer to recruit the apprentice. So Again, employers can advertise their apprenticeship vacancies on apprenticeship.scot, and that in turn will inform people about the availability of those apprenticeships. An apprenticeship isn't a course. An apprentice is an employee who will undertake their apprenticeship, which balances elements of knowledge and understanding with the development of skills and competences. So it's not a course. People do not apply to SDS to become an apprentice. People apply to employers to become an apprentice, and employers will advertise those vacancies, and SDS can broker the joining up through apprenticeship.scot.
So could that technically then include international student employees if that's what the business was willing to support?
The apprenticeship funding is for people who are resident in Scotland.
Scotland, right. Okay.
Scottish Government money at the end of the day.
Okay, great, thanks. I've got a question from Clara here. Has this qualification taken into account the next gen HNs that are being developed?
Certainly, we engaged with SQA, awarding body, throughout this process, and I think they were along that and involved in part of the technical expert groups. The outputs of this have been shared with SQA, and it's part of kind of regular discussion that we have with SQA around about the development of qualifications and how these employer-generated standards, if you like, for this can be reflected into a range of qualifications to ensure that if employers decide and kind of detail kind of what the competencies, what the knowledge, skills and behaviours are, that the standards that we generate from this are able to be referenced and utilised within further qualifications, so there is a kind of standard approach to the kind of knowledge, skills and behaviours that are required for these roles. So short answer, yes.
Thank you. We've got a question here about the makeup of the qualification and the units that are within that. Is that something that will be on the apprenticeship.scot website?
Yeah, so there's details on the kind of, if you go through the employer, my understanding is that there is the employer portal, if you like, or the employer field within that. My understanding is there should be details around about the qualification in there, but if we can't find it, I'm happy to kind of to see if we can kind of forward that one.
Thank you. I've got another question here. I was wondering if you could comment a little bit more about the articulation between foundation apprenticeship, modern apprenticeships and graduate apprenticeships, with particularly length of this technical apprenticeship. Can you speak a wee bit more about that articulation, that movement between the different levels?
Yeah, certainly that's kind of something that where we are kind of trying to create the pathways through from foundation apprenticeship to modern. I think as Billy mentioned, that the craft apprenticeship we have at SCQF 6, we've now got this at SCQF 10 at technician level, and then the graduate 10. What we are looking to do is to create that pathway so that employers can begin to kind of utilise that for, and it's not to say that every individual or employer should take every step within the pathway. But what we are trying to do, and kind of one of the pieces that we've been asked to look at by the OECD in terms of recommendations, is about how we recognise kind of common skill or kind of prior skill and knowledge, and how these can be recognised to enable essentially articulation and kind of progression within these areas. That's something that we are just in the process of beginning to explore, because utilising kind of different sets of qualifications and through different partners, whether that be university or SQA or others, is something which the system itself doesn't necessarily lend itself to it, but there's certainly kind of an exploration around about how we can ensure that recognition of kind of prior knowledge or prior learning can be applied and recognised throughout this to shorten the pathways if someone is looking to use the apprenticeship family of products to upskill or kind of reskill into different areas. So that's certainly something that we are beginning to explore, but that's a larger piece of work as we begin to kind of work through that.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to support that, I did refer to the fact that in this new programme, we're looking at better ways to use resources and eliminate waste. And I think in the ethos of articulation, we'll be looking at working with our employers, working with the providers to look at where it's possible to take prior qualifications and prior experience to have accelerated entry where possible from the modern into the new technical apprenticeship, and from completion of the technical apprenticeship, accelerated entry into the graduate apprenticeship in engineering, design and manufacture. So it's important that we practice what we preach as well.
Sure. And here's a bit of a follow-on question for that. So it's somebody asking how long the apprenticeship would be if you were upscaling as opposed to taking on a school leaver. Would there be a difference between the two processes, or?
I would say so, Terry, yeah.
Yeah, there should be a shortening of that. I think it would depend upon the individual. Then it would obviously depend upon the individual's current skill or previous qualifications, but there should be an ability to contract some of that, contract the timeline. And I think that we say within it, the apprenticeship itself could take between kind of 12 and 24 months, but up to 48 months, depending on what else has been done with it. So I think that probably looking at kind of how an individual, what parts of the apprenticeship the individual has prior experience or prior knowledge of, it should be assessed. So there should be a shorter pathway for those that have the appropriate kind of recognised skills or previous qualifications that play into this. So it should be a shorter pathway, yes.
Okay, so there's the kind of flexibility there for an individual, depending on their background. Okay, perfect. Got a few more minutes, folks. If you get any last questions, pop them in the chat. I've just got one last one from myself, either for Terry or Billy. What sort of numbers are you anticipating for the apprenticeship? Is it something there's a number on it, or what are you hoping to get through the system?
I think that what we have here is a new apprenticeship, and I think that certainly kind of the expressed interest that we've had in it has been really encouraging. We don't really have a set target from this. I think that what we would look to do is to work with Billy and yourselves and kind of Enginuity to say, you know, can we promote this? Can we make sure that every employer that wants to use it or needs to use this apprenticeship is aware of it? And they take that on and then look to see how we build on that in years and moving forward. So making sure that we kind of make an effort to grow the apprenticeship, to grow the usage of this, and to grow the skills that this apprenticeship develops. So no set target in the first year, but kind of one of the kind of key areas is to continue to kind of work through NMIS and Enginuity and Scottish Engineering and the engineering sector to raise the awareness of this apprenticeship, so that the employers that need the skills that this apprenticeship will deliver have access to them and are aware that this is a route for them to take. But something we would hope to establish in this year and then grow into future years, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. And there's one last question here from Sally, just asking how the technical apprenticeship will be delivered, sort of number of college days versus work days. What's the sort of ratios we're talking about?
Well, that's roughly, say, kind of a rule of thumb is that there's normally around about, and there's no statutory recommendation for this within Scotland, we generally say that there's roughly about an element of about 20% off the job. How that is configured is a conversation between the training provider and the employer. So it may well be that there's elements where it's decided that there is a period of kind of block learning that happens at the front end, a piece of kind of underpinning knowledge that might be required, or that might be on a kind of 1 day a week basis. So there's an element there in terms of kind of flexibility, in terms of negotiation with the training provider, in terms of kind of what they offer and what the kind of shape of how that apprenticeship is delivered. But as I say, it's generally over the duration of the apprenticeship, the rule of thumb is generally about kind of 20% or 1 day a week off the job to support learning. And that doesn't necessarily mean off-site. It just means kind of focusing on developing the skills or knowledge or capabilities for that apprenticeship.
Great. Okay, I'll take this one last. I'll make this as our last question. We've got a question from Pauline asking for the difference between a technical apprenticeship and a modern apprenticeship for reference. Certainly,
Pauline. At its simplest level, it's the level of SCQF. So modern apprenticeship generally goes to kind of up to kind of SCQF 7. A technical apprenticeship's SCQF 8 and 9 off the top of my head. And then I think we have graduate and professional apprenticeships above that. So in terms of kind of the difference in terms of modern apprenticeship, it's a levelling piece, but the mechanism in terms of kind of funding, the mechanism in terms of application between modern apprenticeships and technical apprenticeships is exactly the same. Okay, great.
I know I said well, a couple more minutes. I'll let you off. I'll let you off. You're not getting off the hook yet. A couple of questions here. Has the funding contribution and model for apprenticeships been agreed by SDS?
Yes, it has. It's been reviewed in terms of kind of looking at kind of it's utilising the kind of standard model of contribution development. So that's certainly something that's been developed and will be shared with training providers and more broadly once the contracts are in place.
Okay, and I will take this as a very last question because it tails it off quite nicely, is when will this qualification become available? Is this open basically from today, I guess?
Sorry?
When will this qualification become available?
As Billy says, then what we're looking to do is to kind of make sure that what we have is providers in place, and as soon as we have that, we're happy to kind of put that out through Scottish Engineering, through Enginuity and others, just to make sure that actually there's an awareness when we have this live and available to employers.
Okay, perfect. No, I'd like to take this opportunity just to thank all of our speakers and our attendees today. I know for some of you, apprenticeships may be something you've been doing for a long time, but hopefully there's a couple online as well that are thinking about apprenticeships for the first time. And maybe this type of apprenticeship is something that you think would be useful for your business. Now, obviously, it's part of one of the many tools that are coming online to help deal with some of those changes in this new digitisation piece and help keep your business ahead of the game effectively. I'm sure there's probably loads more questions that will come up. So what we will do is make sure there's contact details go out. So if you get any more questions, I'm sure any of the callers, any of the speakers on today would be more than happy to answer those questions in person as well at a later date. So I'd just like to take this opportunity, thank everyone for your involvement, Billy, Terry, and Trevor as well, just drop my pen. So thank you very much for your attendance today, and as I say, any other information, please do get in touch. Thank you. I'll hand over to Debbie.